Welcome to our Mondays with EFTI.Talk, the Friedheim Tourism Institute and Department of Tourism, Hospitality, and Event Management in the College of Health and Human Performance at the University of Florida are presenting to you EFTI.Talk. It is my great honor to introduce our highest leader in our college, Dr. Mike Reid, who is the Dean of the College of Health and Human Performance at the University of Florida. Dean Reid is recognized for his visionary leadership and research. Dean Reid will introduce our panelists and serve as a moderator for today's program. Dean Reid, the stage is yours.
Dr. Fu, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind introduction and the opportunity to be part of today's conversation. We are honored to have three senior executives and passionate University of Florida supporters who are all Gators to talk with us today a little bit about issues surrounding marketing, sales, communication, consumer insight in the travel and tourism industry. Alice Norsworthy is the Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer for Universal Parks and Resorts. Alice has been a senior executive with Universal Orlando in the past. Many of us who live in Florida know her work well. She was responsible for launching the Wizarding World of Harry Potter and also Universal's Volcano Bay, both of which are new components of the Orlando Parks area. She was, prior to her time with Universal, she was Senior Vice President of Marketing for Royal Caribbean. And prior to that, she had a number of senior leadership and managerial roles for Walt Disney World. Ms. Norsworthy has a number of awards to her credit. That includes recognition by Advertising Age as one of America's top 50 marketers, quote, who broke through the clutter and delivered real impact and ROI for their brands. Alice, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Mike.
Second, Monisa Cline is a senior executive with over 25 years of experience in the travel and tourism industry. Most recently, she worked as Vice President, Sales and Alliances. Well, no, it's not true. Before she was at Hawaiian Airlines, she was the Senior Vice President and Global Head of Energy, Resources, and Marine for Carlson Wagglet Travel. Carlson Wagglet recruited her after she had had a long and successful career in the airline industries, including a role as Vice President of Sales and Alliances at Hawaiian Airlines, and 24 years at Continental Airlines, where she became the Vice President of North American Sales. Her latest venture includes starting her own business, which is Cline and Company. Her career accomplishments include being honored as the Allied Member of the Year by the Global Business Travel Association. Monisa, welcome to this panel.
Thank you, Mike.
And finally, we've got Rick Merriman, who joins us as the Vice President of Consumer Insight for Measurement and Analytics for Disney Parks, Experiences, and Products. He's responsible for infusing consumer-centric thinking and decision-making into domestic businesses that include Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Disney Cruise Line, Disney Vacation Club, Adventures by Disney, and National Geographic Expeditions and Consumer Products, Games, and Publishing, a vast portfolio for which Rick is responsible. He's been a Disney cast member for more than 30 years, serving leadership roles in revenue and profit management, human resources, ride and show engineering, and developing the Adventures by Disney business. Rick, it's an honor to have you with us.
Thank you, Mike.
So given that it took about an hour and 45 minutes just to introduce each of you, you're so experienced. Help us cut through the clutter a little bit. Give us your personal insights. Easy sort of softball question to start with. I'd love to hear what you consider to be sort of your greatest achievement or the achievement you're most proud of. Maybe Alice, you could kick us off.
Sure. Well, that's a tough question.
I would have to say, when I think about what I'm most proud of in terms of what I've accomplished, I would have to say that I think about the teams that I've had the privilege of working with and the collective ability that we've had to make a difference for the company. There's nothing like focusing on a new event or a new attraction like launching the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, or an entirely new theme destination like the one we're building in Beijing. To unite a team under a shared purpose and just make great things happen together. And so those are among my proudest moments, just standing there at the end of those accomplishments with the team overall. And that's also true, not just of maybe some of the occasions that you might anticipate, but it's also true in things like how our company handled the last year, and how we were able to come together as a team and really work through all the challenges. So I think that's what I'm most proud of, is just being part of great teams and being able to inspire others to a shared purpose.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Monisa, how about you?
Sure. Very similar theme, I think. It's about the people, the developing of the people. I always say that hiring is the single most important decision that a manager or a leader can make, right? So I think it's really important to hire the right person. And I've had the good fortune of working with good teams, as Alice has. And I think my greatest accomplishment is developing the people, that they've gone on and have succeeded and have gone on to other leadership roles. So I think for me, it's about developing my people. That's my greatest accomplishment. So.
Great. Monisa, thank you. Rick, what do you think?
Well, it's hard to argue with what Alice and Monisa have shared. That is absolutely the most rewarding and fulfilling part of my career to date, has been the cast members and colleagues that I've had an opportunity to hopefully help shape their thinking and share a perspective that made us better as a team. And I would just extend the thought to clarify, I'm sure this is true for Alice and Monisa as well. It's not just your direct subordinates. It's really influencing and help developing all those around you, including your leaders, and in the appropriate and appropriate time and place and manner to help shape their thinking, and not necessarily assume they have all the answers and they're just looking for you to agree. So I think it's a 360-degree development of people that I've enjoyed, and I think I'll look back on with the proudest memories.
Before we move into that, before we move outside this topic, I am impressed by the thread that runs through all the answers, that it really is about the people. And I remember the comment that Alice made about, during this time and during this pandemic, that it's also been a challenge. Could you talk a little bit about how you manage a large team of colleagues and employees, given the communications and the organizational challenges of a pandemic? How do you work with your people? What have you developed new tools, or I'd be fascinated to hear more about that. Rick, how about leading that off?
Sure. It certainly has been a challenge, particularly for the Disney organization. We've always been very much a relationship-based company. We're one of the first to be world renowned for being a first name company, and we I think have become very dependent and comfortable with in-person dialogue and relationships. That's code for we like to have a lot of meetings. Anyone that's ever worked with Disney knows that. We're very consensus based, regardless of your title, level, or scope. We're anxious and look for broad consensus on decisions we make. So over the last year, with the vast majority of our team needing to work remotely, that is changing as operations return to their open status. But working as remotely as we've become, it's been a big adjustment, and we probably use all the same tools I suspect everyone else does. So far, I would say we haven't met a remote working tool we don't like, because we use them all. So, Zoom, Slack, Microsoft Teams, we're agnostic in that regard. But But I think more importantly, we're recognizing that we're going to have to take some deliberate steps to assure we're sustaining our culture, because it's likely that this, hybrid, remote, on-site arrangement is not going to ever revert back, in my mind, to what it once was. And some of this was already happening, and I think the pandemic just accelerated it with the emerging workforce. And so just to be transparent, we're in the midst of examining, what are those cultural sustainment tools that make sense in a more remote environment versus relying on the tried and true, let's get everybody together in a big conference center or whatever it might be. And I think more to come on that. I wish I knew all the answers, but I think the first step is recognizing it is different. It's going to be different. We need to adapt.
Yeah. Other opinions, other thoughts?
I would say, actually, we've had to be very intentional about communication. And I think actually we've gotten better based on just needing to ensure that we're touching base with all of our team members and that everyone has the same information. I think maybe we took for granted some of the forums we had were really productive and we were able to communicate, but we've now had to move to much more intentional communication. As Rick said, we've used all of the tools that you can think of, and including podcasts and also shared virtual information areas. And so I think there's been a great deal more planning around the whole communication effort to ensure that everyone has the same information, everyone is is able to ask questions and able to get the clarity that they need in their work. And so I think based on that, we've put a lot more measures in place to just ensure that communication is happening.
Of course. Monisa, further thoughts on this?
No, I think you can't overemphasize the communication piece, right? I mean, that's just critical and key. So I think the comments that Rick and Alice have made are spot on, and you just can't communicate enough. And I think transparency is important. It's been a challenging year. And so I think really good companies have to be very upfront with the challenges that, we face as an industry. And so I think you just can't emphasize communication enough. So I think that's the message here.
So let me turn this just a little bit and talking about another community of people that I know you also are very intentional about communicating with, and that's the consumer or the customer. Customer satisfaction has always been sort of a prime metric that the industry has been concerned about. In the current environment, I think the pandemic has really made that even more critical, and it's made it, I can imagine, quite challenging. How do you think about customer satisfaction in general? What approaches do you find most significant? And how have those changed with the pandemic? Do you approach that any differently?
So I'll jump in. Speaking from kind of the airline and the aviation sector, we've always used surveys, to measure customer satisfaction. I think that's very effective. I think with COVID, you're seeing it continue, maybe shorter, but more instant. Sometimes you'll get a text right away. How did we do? Airlines want to know, a lot of companies want to know instantly. How did we do? How was your experience? What could we have done better? But very short surveys, I think, are key. And also in the airline sector, because there's so much public reporting that takes place through the DOT, the Department of Transportation, there's a lot of transparency, right, on customer complaints, on-time performance, several measurables in that regard. So I think we have a pretty good handle on understanding customer satisfaction because there is so much data and so much information that's out there publicly in the airline industry. So,
yeah, of course. Parks and attractions may be different. Alice?
Yes, I would just add, in addition to surveys, it also right now being able to really look at data and information that's out there, secondary information, as well as being able to look at reviews and get comments in the social media. So there's a lot of tools you can use now to really understand the environment and what guests are saying on a secondary basis versus a straight survey. So the combination of both of those, primary and secondary information, allows you to get a much more robust, I think, picture of guest satisfaction and what really matters to your consumers. But it's always good to ensure from a survey standpoint that you're getting a cross-section of your audience, and ensuring that you're able to look at the data and answer key questions. So I've experienced both a variety of surveys, very quick surveys, as well as longer surveys that are that guests can email back to you or provide back to you. But then also looking at what information is out and available just based on what consumers are saying out in the digital space and the social space as well is important.
Yeah, so you mentioned something about making sure that you're getting the information from the right customers or consumers. How do you figure that out? How do you sort that?
Well, that is where surveying, you can be very intentional about your customers and your audience, and ensuring you're reaching out to an audience that best represents your potential customers. So versus, sometimes looking at secondary data, you don't always get a balanced group of individuals.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. Rick, further comments?
I think that's all right. One thing I would touch on that Alice mentioned is this understanding what's important to your customers and your consumers and your guests. We too have transitioned, and much of it's been hand in hand with our digital transformation of our business to a more digital insights and analytics function. And I'm sure we're not alone in that fact, but what used to be an in-person survey has now been digitally transformed and is more automated. Another big move has been towards complementing the post-experience insights within the moment intervention almost. So I think we've all come up in an era where, the surveys and data you compiled by definition could only benefit the next guest, because the guest who had that experience had already completed their experience. So we have now complemented our post-experience work with some in the moment, during the experience opportunities to gather feedback, and where appropriate, look to recover a situation as need be. It's not as statistically valid, and you have to get a little comfortable with, it may not be representative, but if in fact guests and consumers are having less than optimal experiences, why wouldn't you want to know about it in the moment rather than finding out a week later? But to the point of knowing what's important, I think ultimately that might be the most important area to focus on as a result of the pandemic. We will certainly all adopt our methodologies, but what if the drivers of our desired outcomes have changed? And so to Alice's point, we use secondary work as well as proprietary work, qualitative, deep dive, social listening, et cetera, because maybe what was important in 2019, maybe that's not as important in 2022, but maybe something new or different is. And you can't chase everything. So being sure that you're keenly in tune with the drivers of your desired outcome, whatever that might be, I think will ultimately be perhaps the most important element of what we need to focus on as a result of the pandemic.
Yeah, Monisa?
Yeah, I just want to add one other thought too. I think there is a direct correlation from employee satisfaction to customer satisfaction. So if you look at companies that have high employee satisfaction, there's a darn good chance that there's a high customer satisfaction too. I mean, it's been proven that there is a direct link to that. So just wanted to throw that out as food for thought.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's important. Thank you. I want to come back in a minute to some of the things that I think I've heard in several of those comments, which relate to real focus at the University of Florida recently on artificial intelligence. But before going into that topic specifically, I did want to talk about sort of the other side of your interactions with the consumer or the customer, and that is marketing. I realize that that's sort of a primary focus maybe for all of you at one time or another in your career. In terms of marketing, do you see that has evolved a lot? Has that really changed a lot over the course of the course of your careers? And if so, sort of what now is the point of the spear? Really, where is marketing being primarily driven in the current industry? Alice, it's in your title. You got to do it.
Sure. I'm happy to start. I was sitting here. That was a broad question, and I'm thinking through my career, how has marketing evolved?
Yeah, feel free to limit it as much as you want.
Okay. Well, I would say broadly, through my career, it's actually gone from more of an science, and certainly both are required in great marketing, but particularly recently, the tools have allowed us to take the great creative work and be very personalized and customized in the way that we interact with our audiences and create experiences and messaging and marketing programs that really can meet the needs of not just a broad audience, but very specific audiences as well. And that's where marketing has real power in terms of being able to drive additional growth for a company, is to really understand the unique needs of audiences and be able to serve up and speak to them in a way that best motivates them. So it is a real balance between the art and the science, and you have to be able to do both well. But the focus, if you look at just with the explosion of media choices and channels that we have to deal with, and the application of big data and machine learning to allow you to navigate that entire space and be able to serve up different messages to different people based on their own unique circumstances and needs and interactions with you, makes the marketing much more challenging and much more specific and much more fragmented, but also pretty exciting, and provides, I'll say, as I look at how marketing's evolved, it used to be one big idea, big campaign, and now it's many ideas and campaigns that have to simultaneously be out in the marketplace, identifying their customers. So it really has evolved, and it's exciting. There's always more challenge and always more opportunity in the marketing world.
It sounds overwhelming. I can't. Other thoughts, Monisa? Yeah.
Yeah, great thoughts, Allison. I think for the airline sector, when I look over my career span, I mean, the internet was a game changer, right? And we probably have a lot of students today thinking, wait, we've always had the internet. But in our generation, we didn't. When I started working right out of, University of Florida, there was no internet, right? So it was just getting started. So I think that had the biggest impact on how we all communicate with our customers, the messaging, how we distribute, how we sell. Before the internet, travel agencies were the predominant way of buying travel, right? And today, consumers like to buy themselves and go directly to the suppliers. So I think the internet has had a huge impact on the way that we market and communicate and have relationships with customers. But I think in the present tense with COVID, big game changer for the airline industry. They really had to pivot, because before it was about, they would market and talk about the services, the destination, the frequent flyer programs. Now it's all about clean and safe. So they've really had to do a big shift in terms of how they message and market themselves with COVID. And I think it's paying off. I mean, that's clean and safety is number one, on top of the list. So, and I think that you'll see that continue. So that's been a huge change. And then one other thing for the airline sector, for the big airlines, the big three, it's always been about corporate and business travel. Now it's all leisure and tourism. So that's huge for this audience, right? All the recovery that we're talking about and we're seeing is really on the leisure side, not so much on the international and business travel. So I think that's key for this audience and this group. So just a couple thoughts.
Thank you so much for that. Rick, you got to weigh in, man.
Yeah, well, talk about how marketing's changed. You mentioned that Alice earlier in her career was at Disney, and I was sitting here reflecting. When she was at Disney, I don't think she was the largest consumer of our technology spend, but today our CMO is the largest spender of technology spend. So that's been a pretty radical shift in a pretty short amount of time when you think about it. And for me, living in the insights and analytics space, I was always intrigued by, I think it was John Wanamaker, right? The founder of what would become Macy's department stores, over 100 years ago said, I know that half of my advertising spend is wasted. The problem is I just don't know which half. And that drove generations of analysts and others, financial departments trying to figure out, wow, if he's even close, think of the savings we could achieve if we could identify what is really working and driving our business. And with the tools that have emerged, I think we're closer than ever to reaching that over 100-year-old aspiration of understanding which messages at which time, at which place, to which consumer are in fact making a difference, and which are just noise and being wasted in the ecosystem and helping fund, you name how many digital platforms you want to name, but they thrive on advertisers continuing to fund their campaigns on their platforms. So it's a race to optimization that is a industrial engineer from the University of Florida I find fascinating. So
absolutely. One other comment that came to mind as Monisa was talking, the other interesting part is to do this really well, to use data and intelligence really well, you do need history. You do need trends, and you do need an understanding of how things have evolved and over time. And one of the things that COVID did is, through all of our history, we had to set a lot of it aside because all of the trends stopped, and we had to figure out from the start where we were going to go and scenario plan our way to understanding what our options were. So, that's been another, a much more recent change, is we've had to sort of build up again from our understanding of trends and having the data to be able to know, where our audiences were and how they were moving. So that's also been a real challenge in the current environment.
I was wondering, in listening to this, there's this theme which says that you use digital technology to get the message out and to target the message out. And then Rick made the point that it's the response to that really is critical, and you want to optimize that. How do you associate those two components? I mean, you've got the outflow and you've got the inflow, but how do you know that they're closely aligned, or sort of which responses are linked to the messaging you're making?
Well, I can take a stab at that if you like, or, I have to be careful, with everything I disclose on this call with it being recorded. And
yeah,
but
it's very important for us to keep you employed. So
yeah. I would just encourage any of those that might be interested in how artificial intelligence and machine learning work in this space. A really good example of that is a technique called multi-touch attribution for analyzing media effectiveness. And so it ultimately doesn't require you to, on a one-to-one basis, link message with response, but instead uses some relatively well-established mathematical concepts that aren't that different than regression, to be honest with you, at its core, that just says, I'm going to look for variance in the types of messages I'm communicating to individuals. And then I'm going to see which sets of individuals are behaving and responding optimally. And then I can continue to test and adjust, in essence, that mix and timing of messages. And again, optimize is the word of the day. It's not about finding the perfect solution. It's about just continually looking for optimization, improvement, and so forth. So multi-touch attribution is a very specific method, that relies on a lot of digital technologies, proven mathematical concepts. Supervised machine learning would probably be the most accurate description for it. So that'd be one example.
Yeah. Other thoughts on that?
Yeah, Rick said it well. There are a lot of different models and companies that do various types of research and data and intelligence in order to really look at the return on your investment of marketing.
Yeah.
And I would say just something very current, you may have begun to notice in your just personal time on the internet, suddenly every website you're going to is asking you about your cookies. And they don't mean your chocolate chip cookies, but they're looking for new permissions. They're being more transparent. There's an emerging set of law, led by Europe and the state of California, but now becoming, more generally accepted, along with some things that, let's just say Google and Facebook and others maybe aren't going to collaborate in all the ways they always have, because they're beginning to see that their destinies may not be shared. It just just continues to complicate all this. I mean, the minute the technology and the methodologies get even close to being current with what's going on, the whole landscape can change in 6 months. So there's a real career opportunity for someone who is knowledgeable in that space and willing to stay current. Because what we were doing 2 or 3 years ago in this space is now antiquated, and probably what we're doing today will be antiquated in 2 to 3 years from now. But it's a very complex, big data space with lots of complexity, but it's also just fascinating and huge opportunity when you look at the investment spend in the advertising space, worldwide. It's just, some astronomical sum. So there's a lot of opportunity for anyone that's interested in getting into that.
This is a really exciting conversation, because I know that there are students on this webinar who are watching this and listening to you speak about the importance of it. And that perfectly parallels changes that have been rapidly occurring at the University of Florida over the last 12 months. University of Florida has been given a gift by NVIDIA, one of the premier manufacturers of artificial intelligence computers, a $50 million gift of a computer and the support equipment to go with it, which is being paired with Hypergator 3, our supercomputer. And in parallel with that, the university is committing itself to artificial intelligence as a skill set that we will embrace comprehensively throughout the university. So in our college, the program that has adopted it most quickly is Dr. Fu's Tourism, Hospitality, and Event Management, where they have already created and gotten approved for distribution 3 new courses that address artificial intelligence and machine learning and how it relates to the travel and hospitality industry, and a new graduates or new certificate program that's available both for undergraduate and graduate students. So the point is that I think our community, the folks who are listening to you, are really fascinated by this, and it vitally matters to them in a very personal way. Could you talk a little bit, as executives who have a big workforce working for you, what do you think our students should be thinking, or how can they position themselves to work in organizations like the ones you lead? What do you look for in a student? What do you want us to be teaching them?
So I'll take that one. I would say if you have an aptitude for analytics and statistics, and if you have an aptitude for it, but even if you like the marketing side or more of the creative side of it, I would say continue to develop those skills, because even if you're not doing the analytics yourself, being able to work with analytics and being able to, like I talked about, creative needing to be personalized and customized as well. The opportunity to really apply analytics in not just the specific technology, but also in all the elements of the marketing program. And so I think understanding it and being able to use it is important. And so I would encourage, as students are going through their classes, if they have an aptitude for analytics and statistics or any of the math skills, to develop those, because they will be useful. And then I would also say really understanding how artificial intelligence works, the fundamentals of just knowing how it works and knowing what the advantages are and where to apply it, because it will continue to be a capability that will continue to be important and be utilized throughout the entire customer journey of the travel experience, from marketing to the experience itself, from after your visit. So I just think it'll be used in the operation, in all of the different aspects of the guest experience.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would just echo. I mean, I think having some foundation in statistics will be a lifelong skill that will benefit graduates. Because again, while AI and ML sound very contemporary, very innovative, and it certainly is, it's all rooted in some principles that have been around for hundreds of years in some cases, known as math, basically, is what I would say. So statistics proves, of all my undergraduate and graduate curriculum, the skill I use every day to this day and have for most of my career could be traced back to some form of statistics. Certainly computer science, anything in the technology, digital field. And then I would just echo, these aren't skills just within travel and hospitality that are concentrated only in the analytics and marketing. For example, the field of revenue and yield management is vastly untapped. The airlines, as Monisa talked about, have set the standard in that. Certainly the large, most hotels are there, but there are so many experiences and price points in our industry that a few people get together in a room and say, what do you think this is worth? And they come up with a price. And if a lot of people buy it, they raise the price. If a lot of people don't buy it, they discount it. And it turns out there's probably some optimization that could occur there. And again, it was always the reason it hasn't been done has been the cost of implementing a revenue management system would not be warranted for a smaller offering or a smaller business. But now with AI and ML, and especially if you put it in the cloud, everybody can be a player. The small operation, the medium-sized operation. So I'm really intrigued by the three courses already being offered. I think it's very forward thinking, because I don't know that people think of our industry as cutting edge in that regard, but the opportunities are certainly there.
Yeah, thank you.
And I would just add that AI is already playing a huge role in travel, right? As Rick mentioned, on the airline side, revenue management systems, I mean, they're looking at data that help them determine where they fly to, the routes, what are people willing to pay? How do we distribute the airline tickets? So that's just one example. When you call reservations and you have voice commands, that's using AI, right? To make sure that we're getting you to the right person and getting you the right answers, facial recognition, that's being tested at some of the airports today. So that's being, utilized. So I think AI has been a player and has been there for a while. And it's just going to continue to evolve and get better. They're talking about autonomous pilots. I don't know. I don't know if I want to be on that airplane, but that's they're talking about in decades that's a possibility, right? So pretty exciting. So I think it's something that's there and will continue to touch all aspects, whatever part of the business that you're in.
Yeah, so can I get your advice? We are just launching, Dr. Fu's department is launching a master's degree, a master's certificate in that. Do you think this sounds like something that for mid-career professionals might be attractive, to have an online certificate program that would be available to folks who are mid-career in travel and hospitality? Would that be attractive, or might we, you know, how could we focus that to be a better service to the industry?
Yeah, I think there certainly would be opportunity there for people who want to continue to grow their career, or find it, or are looking for a new opportunity in a company. So certainly, I do think that that would be attractive to a group of people, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, our industry's never had any trouble from a brand image standpoint of being a fun place to work. I mean, listen to the things that we worked on, right? You know, Harry Potter, Adventures by Disney. I heard Hawaiian Airlines, and I'm thinking about, you know, I've got to get to back to Hawaii. You know, but I think for many, it's been perceived as having too low of a career cap in terms of, you know, what am I going to do to advance my career? Because there's only so many senior operational roles, right? I think now something like what you just mentioned could open up an entirely new career path to someone who ideally might have the business savvy and the operational experience to know what all those numbers coming out of the machine actually feel like on the other end when you're trying to implement them at the contact center or on the website or wherever it might be. But to be able to bring that science together with experience and knowledge of the industry, I think it'd be very powerful, because we often historically, frankly, have had to rely on acquiring talent from outside our industry and then orienting them to our industry. And that doesn't always work out. You know, this isn't the defense industry or something like that. So I think it's a fabulous offering.
Thank you, Rick. Monisa, last words?
Nope, I ditto. I think it's a great idea.
Well, you've been very kind to let me throw a few questions out, and your responses have really been exciting. I know that Dr. Fu has been monitoring the Q&A, the chat room, and that she has some questions from the audience. So at this point, what I'd like to do is turn this back over to Dr. Fu and let her run that segment of the remaining hour.
Thank you, Dean Reid. And again, thank you for asking such a wonderful question on our behalf. Definitely, you got it. Our executive members, we are going to be on our way to prepare the online certificates. As you all agree, that's the direction we are going to go for it. So again, talking about the 3 AI courses, one is artificial intelligence revolution and applications in tourism, hospitality, and events. The second one is required is smart cities, attractions, and theme parks. I think there will be something other than Rick. Definitely you can make contributions to be our guest speakers. And the third one is option with 2 courses. One is data mining with social data, and the other one is GIS, geography information, spatial analysis with social data. So with 9 credits, that's our certificates for both undergraduate and graduate. So now the question from our audience, I would like to ask you, this one a little bit, something I think students, faculty, we all would like to know. We know you are very busy, so where did you get inspiration and the knowledge from? If you could find your leisure time, spare time. Alice, you want to go first?
Okay, well, I usually get my inspiration from the people around me. So whenever I have a tough problem to tackle or a challenge, I usually bring people together and collaborate with people who are who are maybe closer to the situation, or if it's a creative challenge, maybe bring in people who are not familiar with it, and those that have worked with us or haven't worked with us, just to try to get new perspective and diversity of thought in the process as well. So I get inspiration and energy from really interacting with others, and in helping, work through problems by listening to and understanding other people's perspectives, and helping me maybe form a new perspective as well.
Thank you, Alice. Rick?
Yes, I think it's nurturing the innate sense of curiosity that's inside all of us. But I think sometimes, for whatever reason, society puts up barriers like, oh, you don't want to be afraid you're asking a dumb question, or, well, that's not part of my job, so I probably shouldn't stick my nose in on that, or whatever it might be. I think it's just nurture your sense of curiosity, and keep pursuing things that are intriguing to you, that you'd like to know more about. And those can be professional or personal. For me, I didn't start my career in this industry, but I found that I love to travel. I love live entertainment. It turns out I'm an experienced kind of guy. I don't collect things. A lot of my friends were collecting cars, and I was collecting trips, and I'm like, well, I wonder how this industry works. I'd love to get a look behind it. And to Alice's point, ideally find yourself an organization, a company, whatever it might be, that has a lot of people that are well respected and that you believe you can learn from. I think there's a I forget, I think it might have been I got to be careful quoting a political leader in today's climate, but let's just say there's a senior political leader who bragged about trying to surround himself with people smarter than him, right? I love this quote. If you're the smartest one in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? So go find a different room, because you're only going to learn from others that know something you don't. So curiosity and other people, I think, would be the answer.
That's awesome, Rick. Like you, I enjoy collecting trips. And during every trip, I collect stuffed animals. So I have got lots of, probably too many, 400 stuffed animals in my box. So, Monisa?
Yeah, I think I get inspired by traveling. That's really it's inspirational. It's I consider myself a life learner, and I think when you are travel and exposed to different cultures, I think that's just so enriching, and it just makes you more diverse and more open in the way you think. So I think traveling is a big part of where I get my inspiration. Also yoga, I do practice yoga, and that's important. Yeah, so I think very similar to what Alice and Rick are talking about. So life learning.
Awesome. So again, a gentle reminder, audience, you may type your question in the Q&A box on the screen, and our panelists will answer your question. The second question submitted by our students: what advice would you give to students to achieve a successful career in theme parks and travel tourism? Let's start from Monisa.
Sure. Well, I think the most important thing, and this is something, I mean, there's so many important things, but something that has helped me is to make sure that you are well networked. I mean, you have got to keep your world big and make sure that you're taking full advantage of all the opportunities that, the college offers, right? And getting exposed to leaders and making those contacts and working the network. You have to help people that are your leaders, and then you have to also help people that are behind you, that you're helping, pay the way forward. I think that's so important. So I think networking is key. Developing those relationships with a lot of different people it never fails. There's always an opportunity. Somebody's going to open a door for you. So I think the networking is really important.
Thank you. Rick.
Yeah, I would say, I think in this industry more than most, don't just be willing to do something completely different, but seek it out. because this is the kind of industry where, you might be working in a particular line of business. I'll just pick, you're in the food and beverage line of business, and they may need, assistance over in parking and transportation. Be the first one to raise your hand, because our business is such an interconnected set of experiences when it comes from the consumer standpoint, that those who understand every or multiple parts of the journey will, I think, inevitably rise to the top, maybe perhaps more rapidly than someone who has really limited themselves to a particular line of business. That can be challenging, at least in my experience. Is be the first one to take those extra hours, take that short-term assignment in Beijing or wherever it might be, because and often you may not know what the next step is. I think our industry, people that need a real well-defined career path to age 65 don't do well in our industry. You've got to be very flexible, use that network Monisa talked about, and seize the opportunities when they come up to do something different, and hopefully discover new relationships you can leverage.
Thank you, Rick. How about you, Alice?
Yeah, I would say very similar to Rick. What came to mind for me was particularly when you're early in your career, take every opportunity to learn something new and learn a new area and move around, because move around within a company, because you have the opportunity with each new learning that you have. You're broadening your background, you're broadening your experience. And I would also say, and be open to trying a new role. Two of the roles that I would say most impacted my career and where I've gone were roles I probably wouldn't have sought out or chosen for myself, but I was asked to do them. And I did them, and I realized in the process a whole new capability that I had, and I wouldn't have sought it out, but someone said, "We think you can do this, and we'd like you to try." And so I was open to it, and I did, and it really helped me grow in my career. And I look back on those moments, and those were probably the ones that mattered most.
Thank you.
Well
love your advice. Love your advice talking about being open-minded, be a volunteer, and establishing meaningful relationships throughout the career. Those are very important. Here's one follow-up question. What soft skills and hard skills should a student in hospitality, travel, tourism have, a successful person needs to have in terms of soft skills and hard skills? I think you all have touched on a little bit. So Alice, would you like to talk about either soft skills or hard skills?
Sure. Well, I think the number one in whatever role you're in and whatever industry you're in is communication. So communication skills, being able to express yourself, being able to provide clarity and direction is really important. And as I had said earlier, through the last year, it's been more important than ever. And so I think that just being able to communicate, being able to present yourself is in whatever you do. So I would say from a soft skill, that would probably be the first one. In marketing and in hospitality particularly, I think people interaction is important. So relationship building and collaboration and teamwork are all very important when it comes to this industry, and probably any other industry as well, just with the complexity that you're dealing with and the amount of programs that where you have to work with others effectively. Being able to be a good teammate, being able to collaborate, and being able to communicate with others and work with others is really important. So that would also be a soft skill. And that leads to leadership as well. And so leadership and being able to be self-directed being able to direct others are soft skills, and knowing when to listen. You know, probably the most underrated skill of all is listening. You know, you learn more by sitting back and listening and observing, and it helps you build your own perspective and point of view. So I think those would be the soft skills that I would recommend for someone. I'm sure there are others, but those are the ones that come to mind most. And I'll let someone else take the hard skill question.
Thank you, Alice. Rick, hard skills.
No, so that's my brand on this call. I'm the hard skills guy. That's all right. I'll take it. As Alice said, marketing. Everyone's seen the series Mad Men. You know, about the heydays of advertising. Now we refer to it as it should have been called Math Men because of how much the analytics has risen to prominence. But yeah, on the hard skills side, I think we talked about some of them. Anything with statistics or a good foundation in math, anything in computer science or programming. And again, computer science is probably a dated term showing when I was at the University of Florida. But, you know, I remember one candidate came in, not mid-career, but it wasn't his first job out of school. And what got him the job is he talked me through, he went to the University of Florida, by the way. That helped. That was the first thing. That's what got him the interview, was being a UF grad. But what got him the job was he talked about how he and a buddy programmed, marketed, and sold one of the first Apple game apps. They just did it all themselves. And I'm like, I was just blown away because this was a time when, you know, I didn't know anybody who could do that. So just showing a savviness for technology, for programming, whatever it might be. You know, those are the ones that come to mind, particularly in the spaces we talked about here. Obviously, there are other lines of business, you know, having experience in human resources, you can be in our industry. Having experience in any operational field, you know, food and beverage, retail management, you know, custodial, landscaping, you know, you name it. You know, we've got doctors, we've got lawyers, we've got veterinarians. You know, there's almost no role you can't find your way into this industry. But the ones that come to mind for me, you know, given the AI and ML discussions and so forth, would be the statistics and then anything in the data science field. It could be database management, you know, whatever it might be.
Thank you, Rick. Melissa?
Well, they both covered a lot. And the only thing that I would add is I think you have to be passionate about customer advocacy. You have to have that instilled in you. And we used to have a saying at Continental Airlines in business, everything begins with a sale. So we would tell our airport operations people, hey, these people did not just show up. You know, there was a process to get them here. So I think to be successful in this industry, you really have to be passionate about being a customer advocate. That's what I would add.
Thank
I would
you. So
echo that for sure. That's a great point.
yes. Thank you so much. This is such a wonderful, very meaningful panel discussion. Thank you so much, Alice, Rick, and Melissa. Thank you for your leadership and for your insights. Dean Reid, thank you so much for you making time to be our moderator, being a great leader. Audience, thank you for making time to join us. I hope you enjoy our webinars as much as I have enjoyed you all. Thank you. I'll see you again on Monday, April 26th at 1 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Go Gators.
Go Gators.
Go Gators.
Stop.